Here we are. It's been a minute. A lot has changed. Got this crazy big shop. But this here is my 86 or 87. I can't quite remember. Mazda RX7. So I bought this car for $400 and it was basically a junkyard car. This car had gone to a junkyard. It had lived its life already. Somebody took it out of the junkyard and stole the interior out of it. This car's all gutted now. And so they stole the interior out of it because these cars are extremely difficult to find. They had another RX7 with a turbo 5.3. So they put the interior from this car in that one. And then this one was just the shell. And the floors in this are really rusty. The rocker panels are really rusty. These quarter pieces are really rusty and they're just tape, basically. Yeah, so I wanted a cheap rear-wheel drive car that I could learn how to drift. I figured that this would be a good starting base, as I have a buddy who also has a V8 RX7. So I figured two of the exact same cars would basically have the best version of an internet forum to ask questions to. You know, I don't have to look things up. I literally just say, hey, this is my problem, what do I do? And I get the answer I need and then move on. So this chassis was a base. So you can see it's the wiperless hatch. The car was originally 4-lug. It's been converted now. It doesn't have turbo model mirrors, and it's an S4. So it's got the S4 bumper and the black trim. But it has the turbo hood, an aluminum turbo hood that, again, I got from my buddy that I was saying had the other RX-7. So yeah, it's got a lot of cool bits on it, and we painted it this cool Falcon-inspired livery, and did some white wheels, because I love white wheels. But I guess we can get into the drivetrain aspect of this car so you can see exactly what's going on. So here's the heart of the RX-7. It's the Chevy small block 350, not bored over or anything, but it has a rotating assembly, flat tops. It's got these trick flow 195 heads, so 202 valves, high-rise intake, dual plane, and block huggers. And it's got a comp cam mother thumper cam. It's really good. It makes a lot more power than the trick flow kit did, because this engine basically just had the trick flow package. So like the heads, the intake, and the cam was all trick flow. It was their like performance kit. And then we did the bottom end just to bump up the compression. These heads are also the 62cc chamber. So again, bumping the compression a little bit more, and converted it to an HEI ignition, and it's been pretty great. I had the engine in here the way it was when it was taken out of the previous car, which is the Nova, and I put an oil cooler on it, and when I was making the AN lines, I stupidly did not clean the lines out. And when I put the cooler in the car, it circulated the metal through the engine, wiped out mains and rod bearings. So that really sucked. So we built it again, this time new crank, new cam. I just wanted something with more lift and duration and with a tight LSA. So this thing probably makes, if I had to guess, I'd say it makes like 400 horsepower, maybe a little bit more. And it's a 2-bolt main, which kind of sucks, but I mean, I'm okay with running this how it is. I just don't rev the hell out of it. Behind the small block is a Muncie 4-speed, just a really simple 4-speed box, and it will hold the power that this makes with the weight of the car. We did weigh the car, and it weighed in at 2520. That was before I modified this whole front end. So we had a heating issue, overheating issue when we did the new cam. So I've got this really big radiator in there now from Speedway Motors, and I made some brackets for that, which you can't really see, but I removed all the factory crash support, and I also had to cut the frame rails to fit this radiator. So we don't have overheating issues now, but I definitely need to make a crash support bar for the front. You know, like I said, about 400 horsepower to this engine, Muncie 4-speed. I had a drive shaft made, and he balanced it, made it to size, adapted the 4-speed to the stock base model open diff that comes in the RX7. So the open diff is nice because you can weld them, and although they are smaller and will handle less power, I am only running a 205, I think, on these back tires. You know, so it's really not going to hurt that rear end. I haven't had any issues with it. I have that rear end that's an open that we welded, and I've got a LSD with the back housing on it, and then I also have right there another welded open diff. So I basically have all my bases covered, but that's the drivetrain portion of the car, and it's pretty good for a car that weighs, I'd say, easily now 2,500 or less. The car moves for 400 horsepower. So moving on to the interior, I've got a Jegs universal dash, and then we have everything. All of our gauges are glow shift, and people, they kind of think that they're, I don't know, they just, because they have so many different color options, like you can play with the colors and make them different, people think that they're kind of cheaper, but I think they work pretty great. We've got voltage, we've got fuel level, because we run a stock tank in this. We've got water temp, RPM, engine oil temp, and oil pressure. And we've got everything on this board, on like right here, is operated from this basically relay board. So we've got all of the whites are powers going to the switches on the dashboard, and then they come back, which, you know, operates your relays, and they're all fused, and your blues, or on the bottom, all the different colors, are going to the item that you want to operate. So, you know, like this one right here would be your wiper, this one right here would be your radiator fan, you know, this one here is your fuel pump. Everything is labeled and neatly wrapped up, and I've got some excess stuff here, but, you know, basically it's just a race car. You know, this, I do street drive it a little bit, but it's just made to function, you know. So the interior isn't super pretty. That's why I've got the windows real dark. And with this steel dash, we actually have a really big issue with the sun reflecting off of it into the windshield. That makes it super hard to drive. So you can see the windshield is actually tinted, which helps cutting down on the reflections a ton. So that's the interior portion. The wiring, like I said, the relay board is really nice. Being able to control everything right off of that is super nice. And then another cool touch is we have the license plate, and just to kind of include this into the wiring aspect of the car, because we were just talking about it. When I go to the track, I take the plate off, and now we have kill switch. So if something happens, I'm stuck in the car, I can't get out, say I pass out or whatever, people can shut the car off from outside, you know, and they don't have to worry about me being in there. But yeah, this is kind of the RX7. It's pretty great for what it is. You know, this isn't a perfect RX7. It's a race car. You know, it's not it's not a show car. It's really just something I get to drive and enjoy. I've always been really picky about how my cars look, and I want the cleanest car. You know, I don't want a paint stain. I don't want this rub mark, or, you know, I don't want these little rust bubbles and stuff. And this car just let me kind of step away from that bug in me where everything has to be super clean and perfect or whatever. I just really enjoy having a car I get to drive, and I get to drive it, you know. So that's it for the RX-7. It's really awesome. Like I said, 400 horsepower, rear-wheel drive, drift car, fully built here in this shop, right on that lift, with basically stuff we had, you know, that whole engine, although it's rebuilt now because I messed it up. You know, transmission really wasn't that expensive. There's just a lot of suspension stuff that the car has, you know, BC coilovers. We'll kind of just go over this real quick. You know, Speedway is like the clutch, slave cylinder / throwout bearing. Part Shop Max is basically every suspension component you can get for an RX-7, besides coilovers. For coilovers, we run BC Racing. Comp Cams, they do the lifters and the camshaft. Willwood, all of our master cylinders are Willwood in this car. The Holley carburetor. Free Packet, that is somebody that helps me with business. Lock City Drift, Absolute ISP, one of my businesses. Gilly Built, he's the one that has another RX-7 that gave me the turbo hood and basically my knowledge book. Wiring by Dev, that's me again. Portland Speed, I got the transmission from them, and they also supply any of the AN lines or hard lines for the car that I needed. So it was just really nice being able to have that locally. Austin Machine did the drive shaft. J&C Wheels, Michael Parent, my dad, helped with basically every piece of the car that I needed help with. Troy Mealy does wheels and tires. He's always balancing and changing over my tires. Jegs, just basically MISC of everything. If I needed stuff, I knew that they would have it for the engine or the transmission or, you know, just anything, master cylinders, stuff like that. Chase Bays, they do the clutch adapter bracket from a Willwood master cylinder to an RX-7, and I also run their stainless steel braided lines on all four corners for calipers. I also use them for other things. Drift Knuckles, they modified my front hubs, or knuckles I guess you would call them, to have more steering angle. Adkins Rotary is super big for like axle seals on the diff housing. They were a big part in that. I also have the turbo model brakes all the way around, and those are rebuilt. You can't see them, but those needed seals and pots, which I was able to get from Adkins. You know, they just basically remake parts that Mazda don't have anymore. Glow Shift, all the gauges are from Glow Shift. I've never had an issue with them, and we run them in all of our cars. Well, I guess that one and this one, and then I have my other car, which has all Glow Shift gauges. Mishimoto was the oil cooler. I screwed myself on that one, but they have other great products, and eventually this car will have the Mishimoto oil cooler in it again. And then MSD ignition. For wires, I also run their rev limiter for this car. That way I can rev it to whatever RPM I want to, basically just hold the pedal to the floor, and I don't have to worry about anything because they're taking care of it. That's it for this video. I'll have probably introduction videos on other cars or go-karts or other things. But this is basically the big thing I think the channel will revolve around, is this car, because it's basically the fire within me is this car when it comes to motorsports, because I just love driving this thing. So, all right, guys, thank you for checking in this video, and I'll see you guys next time.